And recording approved. My name is Connor, and I'm really grateful to have so many of you here. This has been a long journey for me, and many of you have been involved intimately in this journey. Some of you from my very first steps, hi Mom, and some of you through my time at Evergreen, but I'm excited to share the results of this research, investigating long-term outcomes on the Evergreen State College Organic Farm. It's a survey of nearly 20 years of program participants. So I'm going to run through my slides, and we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. To begin with, I want to give you a brief overview of the Evergreen Organic Farm. I know many of you are very familiar with it, but for those of you who are not, this is an incredible resource. The farm was founded in the early 1970s. It is on Evergreen's main campus in Olympia, Washington, and the land base is roughly 5 acres, which includes some outbuildings and neighboring gardens and other agricultural projects, as well as classrooms. On the farm are produced fruits, vegetables, flowers, poultry, and livestock. And sales of these products help to sustain the farm economically and operationally. There's paid staff at the farm through the majority of the survey period. This staff included a farm manager, an assistant farm manager, and student farm aides. But for all of the farm's history up until this day, students in academic programs have been the driving force at the farm. And I looked particularly at one academic program, which has been known as the practice of sustainable agriculture for most of its existence, and the name was changed to the practice of organic farming somewhat recently. This course was first offered in 1992. It's a 3-quarter full-time program. And for those of you who are not Evergreen fluent, we have programs, interdisciplinary programs at Evergreen rather than distinct classes. And so this program for students can be their entire academic experience for a year. It goes spring, summer, and fall quarters following the agricultural season rather than the academic calendar. And it's a very intense program where students dedicate a great deal of time. They'll spend 16 to 20 hours per week on hands-on work, and they'll also have 8 hours a week in the classroom, plus additional research and study outside of the classroom. The program includes overnight field trips and farm visits, as well as rotating chores and market shifts. And the program through most of the survey period was anchored by a permanent non-rotating faculty member, although there were seasons when the program was team taught, but by rotating faculty members. So to frame the research that I did, I looked through the lens of educating. The question was, are we educating food citizens or food producers? There's a great proliferation of campus agricultural projects across the country. We're seeing a rise in campus farms and gardens, and typically these projects will pick an emphasis. And so it's useful to kind of sort the different projects by their goals. So one goal is producing food citizens, and one is producing food producers. Typically the programs will do one or the other. We'll talk a little bit more about what those two mean, but it's useful to sort these programs. There's a handful of programs throughout the country that are positioned through their land base and their pedagogy to be able to do both. And Evergreen is certainly one of those programs. Another program we'll discuss that is able to do both is the UC Santa Cruz farming program. Just checking my time here. So the survey that I did was was a survey sent to practice of organic farming and practice of sustainable agriculture students. The survey was based on work at CASFIS, the Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems at UC Santa Cruz. Jan Perez led the study, and they did a survey of nearly 650 alumni in 2009. And Jan was kind enough to let me use her survey instrument as the model for the survey that was sent out to Evergreen students, for which we're going to look at the research. So two quick things to note about Jan's survey that were different from mine is, of course, it was contextualized for UC Santa Cruz versus Evergreen. And Jan's had incredible participation. They had a 60% response rate, and participants spent an average of 50 minutes, nearly an hour, answering their questions. I was hoping to slim down that survey and tailor it for Evergreen. So I had incredible support from the Office of Institutional Research and Assessment at Evergreen. They sent out the survey to 505 former students who had been through the program between 2002 and 2021. So that's our study period. And I had a 29% response rate. Nearly 140 people or 150 people answered the survey, and 132 of those provided enough consistent information that I can analyze them and compare them to the results that Jan and company got at UC Santa Cruz. This was all done online using SurveyMonkey. The questions were optional, so if someone did not want to or wasn't unable to answer a question, they could simply skip it. And the survey was open in December of 2020, which was intentionally targeted for the farming off season. I did send reminders via the Office of Institutional Research and Assessment to try to secure a higher response rate, which was relatively successful. Okay, so that's a little bit about the survey. Let's dive into the results. First, through the lens of the food citizen. Respondents to the survey reported universally, every single person that responded reported that they undertook personal activities in the food system after going through the farm program. 72% reported volunteer work in the food system, and 75% shared that they had paid work in the food system after going through the farm program. 44% of survey respondents, so nearly half, currently work in the food system. And I thought this was really important and speaks to the leadership qualities that students from this program possess. 42% created at least one of their roles in the food system, whether that's starting a farm, creating a nonprofit, generating interest in a role that needed to be filled and then filling it. Students that come out of this program are in many ways leaders in food systems. Evergreen's famous for the interdisciplinary approach, and we see that in the food citizens that have come out of this program. 98% of survey respondents reported implementing at least one of the surveyed equity practices. 99 reported implementing at least one sustainability practice, and 62% of respondents indicated that part of their work involves educating. So they're passing on the education they received at Evergreen and expanding the reach of this program out into the world. Okay, so that's food citizens. Let's look at food producers. This is where the folks that are in the field and on the farms and in the barns. 75% of respondents worked on farms or market gardens at some point after their participation in the program, and 29%, roughly a third, currently work on farms or market gardens. 36% owned or operated their own farm or garden. Let's put that in context. According to a 2010 study by the New York Federal Reserve, 27% of people should expect to work in a field directly related to their undergraduate major. So to see results from this survey showing that 75% of folks that went through the program had a job in the food system, it's pretty striking. One of the things that's great is having access to UC Santa Cruz surveys. We can compare results because the surveys were substantially similar. So we see high numbers of involvement in volunteer activities, food system activities, and professional activities. One thing that I thought was noteworthy and worth further exploration is that only 44% of Evergreen students are currently working in the food system, while 72% of students from Santa Cruz were. And again, those who are currently farming or gardening, it was a higher number from Santa Cruz. There's many reasons why this could be the case, and it's not necessarily a problem, but it's something that is interesting. Okay, so we've established that this program produces food citizens and food producers. but is that to do with the program, or is that because of the top quality students that the program attracts? And we asked students about this. So 95% credit the program for contributing to sustainability efforts that they realized after leaving Evergreen. Here's a really inspiring quotation. POF changed my life for the better. I feel so lucky to have participated, especially knowing how unique and uncommon it is. I wish more people had access to an experience like this that could help them discover the beauty of growing food. To drill down, let's go back. To drill down a little bit deeper into the specific contributions, the light green color on this chart shows people who highly rated this aspect of their skill set, and the dark green is people who slightly less highly, but still attributed as an important factor. So we have really high percentages of folks who point to the knowledge, the skills, and the resources that they gleaned from this program as instrumental into them making their future in the food system. Another important response was the confidence that was instilled through their participation, and the formation of values and development of goals that happened throughout the program. I was also really curious to, as someone who was involved in this program and has been involved in agricultural education, how did students see this program being effective? In what ways was it really helping them? So themes that emerged were the pedagogy and curriculum. Evergreen's pedagogy is relatively unique, and it really tailors itself to a farming program where students can be receiving a lecture on the basics of soil science, out in the field taking soil samples, and up in the lab running those samples, potentially all in the same week. Another really strong thing that emerged was the value of the community of practice that was formed. Students were spending a lot of time together, working closely together with faculty, staff, and each other. And the bonds that were formed were really important to their overall sense of purpose and well-being and accomplishment. Many students called out the expertise of faculty and staff and the ability to connect theory and practice, which is the goal of so many educational efforts, but having the hands-on of a farm really makes that process all the more direct. And community connections, Evergreen is very well connected. The farm is important in the local food system, and there's a wonderful sustainable agriculture community in the greater Pacific Northwest, of which Evergreen is a key part, and students really appreciated the connections they were able to make. Limitations that came up were a lack of structure at times. So the flexibility was important, but the lack of structure could be a challenge. And the work-life balance that was, students are expected to, pay rent, go to school, work on this farm, and invest in the community. And it was just a lot for many students. Although that was part of the value of the experience, it was also deeply challenging. In conclusion, the practice of sustainable agriculture and practice of organic farming program has been producing food citizens and food producers for nearly 30 years. As it moves forward into the next series of decades, I hope to see the program build on the strong foundation and address some of the suggestions for improvement from the students. I'd like to quickly hit a few study limitations, and then we can discuss questions and ideas for future research. So this study was exclusively administered via email. Anyone that didn't have access to a computer or email, or whose email address we had incorrectly, didn't have access to this survey. I think the way that I framed this study following UC Santa Cruz is that we're really asking, what did you do after Evergreen? So it's sort of a slanted question. If someone had not been involved in the food system after Evergreen, they very easily could have felt that this survey was not aimed at them and not taken the 25 minutes to sit down and do it. Another question that I can't really untangle, but is important to share, is As Sean mentioned, I worked at Evergreen for 4 seasons from 2016 through 2019, so which covers part of the survey period. So folks that were asked to take this survey in many cases knew me, and whether they liked me or disliked me would have affected their participation. Thank you all for your time and attention. It's incredibly exciting for me to see your faces, and I really appreciate all of the support, and I look forward to chatting further. Thank you.